story begins with a quiet studio room where the lights are soft and calm. Keanu Reeves sits across from the host of a well-known show. He looks relaxed, but there is something in his eyes that shows he is thinking deeply. The host smiles at him and asks a simple question that becomes the starting point of the entire story. She looks at Keanu and asks if there is one moment with Sandra Bullock that he will never forget. The studio becomes silent in the softest possible way, and everyone waits for his answer. This single question becomes the hook that pulls the audience into the heart of the story. Keanu takes a slow breath. He lowers his eyes for a second like he is searching his memory. Then he looks up again and a small warm smile appears on his face. He says that yes, there is a moment he will never forget, and it is something he has never talked about before. The host leans forward and asks him to explain. The entire room feels still, and even the viewers feel connected to this moment. Something in his voice tells them that this is not a typical story told for entertainment. It is personal and real. As Keanu begins to speak, the story moves into the past. The scene shifts to the year when the two actors were working together on their film. Both of them were young, full of energy, and learning more about the industry with every new day on set. The atmosphere around the filming location was usually loud and tense because there were stunts, heavy equipment, and a large crew all working together. But on this particular morning, something felt different. Clouds covered the sky. The air was thick. Some members of the crew said they had a strange feeling that something unexpected might happen. Keanu explains that on that day they were preparing for a difficult action scene. It involved a moving vehicle and several camera positions. The stunt team had practiced it over and over again. Everyone believed that the risks were under control. However, films sometimes carry moments that break expectations. This was one of those moments. Keanu remembers standing near the edge of the scene area watching the crew get ready. Sandra was a few steps away going through her lines quietly but with focus. She always prepared with full dedication and respect for the entire crew. Keanu admired that about her from the first day they met. As the cameras started to roll, the stunt sequence began. The vehicle moved forward just as planned. The crew followed every safety step they had rehearsed, but one new assistant who had just joined the team that week seemed nervous. She was young and trying very hard to do everything right. She was standing near the side to support one of the equipment operators. Her hands were shaking slightly, but she tried to hide it. Keanu remembers hearing a loud clank that did not belong to any part of the plan. The vehicle jerked in a sudden, unexpected motion. People shouted warnings. The assistant lost her balance and slipped toward the moving vehicle. It happened too fast for most people to react. Keanu ran forward without thinking. He reached out and grabbed her hand just in time. But the force pulled him off balance as well, and he felt his foot slide forward with nothing to hold him steady. For 1 second, he believed he would fall too. This is the moment where Sandra enters the memory with a power Keanu had never forgotten. Sandra saw what was happening with sharp instinct. She ran toward them with all her strength and grabbed Keanu by the arm. Keanu felt her grip tighten with surprising strength. She pulled him back while he held on to the assistant. Together, they managed to bring the assistant to safety. She fell to her knees, shaking with fear. Sandra held her close and whispered to her that she was safe, and she did not need to be afraid anymore. Keanu stood there breathing heavily, trying to process what had just happened. He looked at Sandra. Her eyes were wide but calm. She was checking the assistant for injuries and reassuring her in the gentlest voice possible. Keanu says in the interview that he had seen many people act brave in front of cameras and crowds, but what Sandra did in that moment was real and pure. It came from her heart without hesitation. She did not care about how she looked or what anyone would think. She simply cared about saving a life. The assistant kept apologizing because she thought she had ruined the scene. Sandra gently shook her head and told her to focus on breathing. She told her that everyone makes mistakes and that fear is normal. She spoke with such kindness that even Keanu found himself deeply moved. He remembers standing there feeling a rush of emotions, relief that everyone was safe, respect for Sandra's courage, and something deeper that would stay with him forever. It was the moment he saw her true character in a way that goes beyond fame and work. The crew took a short break after the incident to make sure everyone was all right. Keanu walked over to Sandra and thanked her. She smiled and told him she only did what anyone with a heart would do, but Keanu knew that not everyone would have moved so fast and with such care. He knew that what she did came from who she truly was as a person. Humble, brave, full of kindness. As the day continued, Keanu watched how Sandra stayed close to the assistant. She checked on her again and again. She made sure she ate something and rested. She kept telling her that she did not need to feel ashamed. Keanu admired this even more because Sandra did all of this quietly without expecting any praise. She did not tell the director or the producers. She did not tell the press. She kept it private because her intention was pure. She just wanted someone in pain to feel safe. As Keanu ends the first part of his story in the interview, he looks into the camera and says that this moment changed something in his heart. He realized that sometimes the most powerful moments in life are the ones nobody sees. They are the moments that reveal the truth about a person. He says that this is the moment with Sandra that he will never forget because it showed him what true kindness looks like. It was real, simple, and honest. And that kind of goodness stays with you for the rest of your life. The second part of the story begins right after the moment when Keanu finishes sharing the memory of the dangerous day on set. The host listens with complete focus, and the entire studio remains silent for a few long seconds. Keanu's story has already touched the audience deeply, but the host senses that there is more behind his words. She asks him how that moment affected the rest of the time they spent filming and what it changed for him, not only as an actor, but also as a human being. Keanu leans back slightly in his chair. He takes a breath, and his face softens as he prepares to share a deeper and more emotional part of the story. Keanu explains that after the accident, many members of the crew were still shaken. Several people kept replaying the moment in their minds. It could have gone wrong in so many different ways. Keanu says that he felt a strange mix of emotions that day. He felt gratitude for Sandra because she acted without fear and saved him from falling. He felt protective of the assistant who had been terrified. He also felt a new sense of awareness about how fragile and unpredictable life can be even in the middle of a movie set where everything seems controlled. For the next few days, the energy on the set changed quietly. People were more alert. They watched each other more carefully. They helped each other in small ways. Keanu remembers that even the director seemed more gentle when giving instructions, but Sandra remained the strongest presence. She made sure everyone knew they were safe and supported. Every time the assistant looked nervous, Sandra placed a hand on her back and spoke softly to her. She encouraged her without ever making her feel weak. She made her feel valued. Keanu noticed these moments again and again, and every time they made him see Sandra in a deeper way. One afternoon, when filming was paused due to weather changes, Keanu found himself sitting alone on the side of the set. He was reading his script, but his mind kept drifting. He had been thinking about the assistant and the impact the accident had on her. He had been thinking about Sandra and how naturally she stepped into a role of comfort and protection. As he sat there lost in thought, he heard quiet footsteps and looked up. Sandra approached him with her usual gentle smile. She asked if he was all right and sat beside him without waiting for an invitation. Her presence felt warm and steady. Sandra told him that she had spoken to the assistant earlier that day and that the young woman was still blaming herself for the incident. She told Keanu that the assistant believed she had disappointed everyone. Keanu sighed and said he wished she would stop feeling that way. He explained that accidents happen even to the most experienced people. Sandra nodded and said something that Keanu would remember for years. She told him that sometimes it takes only one difficult moment to break a person's confidence, and it takes someone else's kindness to help that confidence grow again. She looked at Keanu with soft eyes and told him that he had saved the assistant's life that day. Keanu tried to brush it off, but Sandra insisted. She told him that people who act from instinctive kindness are rare, and they deserve to see the value in what they do. Keanu felt his chest tighten with emotion. He had always been humble and rarely praised himself. Hearing Sandra express such sincere appreciation made him feel understood in a way he did not expect. He thanked her quietly, and she smiled before turning her attention to the storm clouds moving across the sky. In that moment, Keanu realized that Sandra carried a kind of emotional strength that did not show itself through dramatic gestures. It showed through calm understanding. It showed through simple caring actions that did not need to be seen by others. This made her unique. This made her unforgettable. The next morning, something surprising happened. The assistant arrived on set noticeably early. She seemed nervous but determined. She approached Keanu and Sandra with a small notebook held tightly in her hand. She thanked them for what they did during the accident. Her voice trembled, but she spoke honestly. She said she had considered quitting because she believed she was not good enough for the job. Then she looked at Sandra and said that if Sandra had faith in her, then she wanted to try harder. Sandra hugged her gently and told her she was stronger than she knew. Keanu felt his heart warm as he watched this exchange. It reminded him that kindness can change the direction of someone's life. The filming continued for several weeks, and during that time, Keanu and Sandra formed a quiet bond built on trust and shared respect. They had worked together from the start of the project, but after the incident, something had shifted between them. They talked more. They laughed more. They understood each other without needing many words. Keanu admired Sandra's humor and her ability to make the crew feel comfortable even in stressful situations. Sandra admired Keanu's calm presence and how he treated everyone with fairness and humility. One day, the director called for a rehearsal of another intense scene. The crew gathered around and everyone prepared mentally because it involved fast movement and precise timing. The assistant was assigned a small but important task. Keanu watched her closely. He could see she was still nervous, but she was trying very hard to control her fear. Sandra noticed it too. Before the scene began, she walked over to the assistant and whispered something to her that Keanu could not hear. Whatever she said made the assistant straighten her shoulders and nod with confidence. When the scene started, everything went smoothly. Every movement was executed with precision. When the rehearsal ended, the director praised the team. The assistant smiled for the first time in days. Keanu felt a deep satisfaction watching her success. He turned to Sandra and saw her smiling gently at the assistant. Sandra then looked at Keanu and gave him a small nod as if to say that everything was going to be all right. Keanu felt a warmth in his chest again. He realized that Sandra had the ability to lift the people around her in ways that were quiet but powerful. As filming continued, Keanu and Sandra grew closer as friends. They shared stories during lunch breaks. They joked between scenes. They respected each other's boundaries and trusted each other's instincts. The bond between them became something the entire crew could see. But more importantly, it became a bond that shaped Keanu's understanding of kindness and strength. As the shoot neared its end, Keanu found himself thinking often about that one moment, the moment when Sandra grabbed his arm and pulled him back to safety with fear in her eyes and courage in her heart. He did not just remember the action itself. He remembered the purity behind it. He remembered the way she cared for the assistant afterward. He remembered the way she spoke about kindness as something powerful and necessary. He realized that this single moment had changed the way he looked at people. It reminded him that real strength does not shout, it protects. Real kindness does not need attention, it simply acts. At the end of part 2, Keanu smiles softly in the interview chair. He says that the days after the accident were filled with silent lessons. Lessons about compassion, lessons about courage, lessons about how one person's heart can become a source of light for everyone around them. He says that Sandra showed him that even in chaotic environments, small acts of goodness can guide people through their darkest fears. He says that this is why he remembers her so clearly, because she did not just save him from a fall. She reminded him what it means to truly care. Keanu sits quietly in the interview chair as he continues sharing the memory that shaped so much of his respect for Sandra. His voice becomes thoughtful as he remembers the days that followed the intense events on set. He talks about how filming moved forward, yet something deep within him remained tied to that moment of sincerity and courage. The more time passed, the clearer he saw the small but powerful ways Sandra changed the atmosphere around her. People listened to her without fear. People trusted her presence. She had a natural way of softening tension even in the busiest moments of work. Keanu explains that there was a particular week during the production that challenged everyone more than usual. Tight deadlines and technical issues created stress for the entire crew. Long hours made people tired and impatient. The weather shifted suddenly and caused delays. The director tried his best to keep the team motivated, but even he seemed overwhelmed at times. Yet Sandra moved through every challenge with patience and understanding. She arrived early every day with a warm smile and a calm tone that helped the crew feel grounded. Keanu noticed this more with each passing day. One afternoon, a problem occurred with a key piece of equipment. The malfunction forced the team to pause filming. The director was upset because they had already fallen behind schedule. The crew members rushed around trying to fix the issue, and the tension grew heavier with every minute. Keanu watched the assistant who had been rescued earlier. She was standing apart from the others and looked unusually worried. She kept glancing at the equipment nervously, as if she feared being blamed again for something she did not cause. Sandra noticed her anxiety. She walked over to the assistant and spoke to her softly. Though Keanu could not hear the words, he could see the effect. The assistant's shoulders relaxed slightly and her breathing steadied. Sandra placed a hand on her arm the same way one might comfort someone who is lost. She guided her to sit down for a moment so she could rest instead of panicking. Keanu felt a warm appreciation rise within him as he watched them. He admired how Sandra always gave others space to feel safe. She treated everyone with equal kindness regardless of their position or experience. Later that day, the equipment needed more time to be repaired, so the director asked the actors to rehearse dialogue for one of the emotional scenes. Keanu and Sandra stepped aside to a quieter part of the set. They stood facing each other with scripts in their hands. Keanu read his lines with care, but found himself distracted by thoughts from the earlier moment. Sandra noticed his lack of focus and asked gently if he was all right. He hesitated and then admitted he felt concerned for the assistant and the pressure the crew was under. Sandra listened closely before she spoke. She told him that pressure reveals the true heart of people. She said that moments of fear show who will step up and who will stay still. She reminded him that it is not weakness to worry about others. She told him it was strength to feel responsible for the people around you because it comes from compassion. Her words settled into Keanu like a soft echo. She had a way of saying things that stayed in the mind long after she spoke them. When they began rehearsing again, Keanu felt a shift in himself. The scene they were practicing required vulnerability. Their characters had to express fear and trust at the same time. Something about the moment made their performance deeper than usual. The director noticed it even from a distance. There was a natural connection in their expressions and body language that made the scene feel real. Keanu later realized that their bond had grown stronger not from the scripted moments, but from the genuine experiences they shared behind the scenes. The next morning, the repaired equipment was ready to be used again. Everyone moved into position to continue the stunt sequence. Keanu stood near one end of the set while Sandra prepared on the opposite side. The assistant had an assigned role again, and though she looked nervous, she appeared more confident than before. Keanu and Sandra exchanged a small nod across the set. It was a silent message that said everything would be fine. As the cameras rolled, the stunt began smoothly. The vehicle moved into action. The crew followed each step with precision. Then something unexpected happened. A small object fell from one of the shelves near the assistant's position and landed close to her foot. Though it did not cause harm, the sudden noise startled her. She flinched and her hand slipped. She almost hit a switch she was not supposed to touch. A wave of fear washed over her face. Before anyone else reacted, Sandra stepped forward with calm control. She signaled to the crew to hold their positions. She walked directly to the assistant and knelt beside her. She spoke quietly to help her breathe and regain control. Sandra assured her she was not at fault and reminded her that accidents happen. Her voice was steady, gentle, and full of understanding. The assistant nodded slowly. Sandra helped her stand and walked her to a safer corner to rest. Keanu observed this moment carefully. He saw how Sandra protected the assistant again without a single complaint. He saw how she remained patient even when the crew felt pressured to keep filming. He felt something within him deepen: admiration, respect, gratitude. It was not about the dramatic actions anymore. It was about the quiet choices that reveal character. Sandra carried a heart that naturally pulled others towards safety. When the filming resumed, Keanu felt more focused. The intensity of the scene grew as the day went on. The cameras captured expressions of fear and determination, but what the cameras could never capture was the emotional undercurrent flowing through the team. Keanu felt it in every corner of the set. People were more supportive of each other. They spoke more kindly. They moved with more care. It was as if Sandra's influence had spread through everyone without her ever trying. As the sun began to set, the crew wrapped up filming for the day. Keanu walked over to the assistant who was sitting by a lighting stand. He asked if she felt better. She nodded and thanked him for checking on her. She said that being around Keanu and Sandra made her feel safe. She told him that she had never worked on a set where two actors cared so much about the people behind the camera. Keanu felt humbled by her words. He told her that kindness is not something people should have to earn. It is something they deserve simply because they are human. Later that evening, Keanu and Sandra stood outside the studio waiting for their cars. The air was cool and the sky held soft colors of fading daylight. They talked about the day and the challenges everyone had faced. Sandra told Keanu she was proud of how strong the assistant had become. Keanu agreed and said that the assistant's strength came not only from within, but also from the support she received. Sandra smiled and looked at him with calm appreciation. She told him that he had played a bigger role than he realized. Keanu felt a warmth travel through him at her words. He wanted to tell her how much her actions had moved him since the day of the accident. He wanted to tell her how much he admired her courage and grace. But instead, he simply told her that the world needed more people like her. Sandra shook her head gently and told him the world needed more people who see goodness in others. Her words settled deep inside him. As they said good night and walked away, Keanu carried with him a growing understanding. He realized that some people leave marks on your life not through dramatic events, but through small, honest moments. He realized that Sandra was one of those rare people who change the way you look at the world without ever trying to. The days on set continued to move forward, yet something quiet and meaningful kept growing in the space between Keanu and Sandra. They did not speak about it directly, but it showed itself in the way they trusted each other during scenes and the calm feeling that followed when they worked side by side. The bond they shared was not loud or dramatic. It was built from honest moments and small acts of understanding that stayed with them long after the cameras stopped rolling. One morning, the crew arrived early because they had to prepare for one of the most demanding sequences of the entire film. The stunt involved rapid movement, precise timing, and complete focus. The director reminded everyone that a single mistake could delay the production for days. The tension was thick enough for everyone to feel it. Even the most experienced crew members spoke in quiet voices as they set everything up. Keanu noticed that Sandra was unusually silent that morning. She was always kind and attentive, but she carried a seriousness in her eyes that made him curious. He stepped beside her while she reviewed her lines. She gave him a small smile, but there was a heaviness tucked behind it. Keanu asked if she was tired, and she admitted that she felt a bit overwhelmed by the pressure the production was facing. She told him that she wanted everything to go well not just for the movie, but for the people who had been working so hard day and night. Keanu felt a soft ache in his chest. He admired how much Sandra cared about the crew. She did not see them as workers. She saw them as human beings trying their best to create something meaningful. He told her she was doing everything right and that her presence made people feel safer. Her smile grew a little more honest at his words. She said she hoped that was true. As the crew prepared the stunt, the assistant stood near one of the equipment stations. She looked more confident than before, but there was still a flicker of nervousness in her eyes. Sandra walked up to her with gentle reassurance. Keanu watched from a distance as Sandra spoke to her with patience. Whatever Sandra said helped the assistant straighten her back and breathe more easily. Keanu felt a wave of admiration again. He could not ignore how naturally Sandra gave strength to others. When the filming began, the intensity of the scene unfolded with full force. The vehicle moved through the set. The lights flashed. The cameras followed every motion. Keanu and Sandra delivered their lines with determination. The stunt required them to move almost in perfect harmony. For a brief moment, everything aligned exactly as it should. Then something unexpected occurred. One of the cables meant to secure a piece of equipment became loose. It swung backward with sudden force. The assistant was standing close by and did not notice it in time. Keanu shouted a warning, but it was too late for her to react. The cable struck the table behind her, knocking it over and sending several tools tumbling toward the ground. The assistant stumbled and lost her balance. Before panic could spread, Sandra ran toward her with incredible speed. She grabbed the assistant's arm before she could fall and pulled her into a safer space. Keanu rushed to help as well. Sandra held the assistant close while the crew hurried to secure the equipment. The assistant trembled as tears filled her eyes. Sandra guided her to sit down and wiped the dust from her face gently. Keanu watched the scene with a tight feeling in his throat. The assistant whispered that she was sorry again and again, but Sandra shook her head and told her that nothing was her fault and that she had done everything she could. The director called for a break to calm everyone down. The crew surrounded the assistant to check on her and reassure her. Sandra remained by her side through the entire moment. Keanu stood a short distance away, observing how Sandra comforted her with quiet patience. He saw how the assistant leaned into her support as if she finally felt safe enough to let go of her fear. Something inside Keanu softened further as he witnessed the depth of Sandra's compassion. When things settled a bit, Keanu approached the two of them. The assistant smiled weakly and thanked him for shouting the warning. He gently told her she was brave for coming back to the set after everything she had already been through. She shook her head and said she was only trying her best to keep up. Sandra placed a hand on her shoulder and told her that trying her best was more than enough. Keanu felt moved by the sincerity of Sandra's words. He realized that she always knew exactly what people needed to hear. Later that afternoon, when the set was finally ready again, Keanu and Sandra walked together to their positions. Sandra looked thoughtful as she adjusted her costume. Keanu asked her if she felt all right. She hesitated before saying that watching the assistant almost get hurt again stirred something heavy inside her. She felt responsible somehow, even though she knew she was not at fault. Keanu understood that feeling. He told her that caring deeply for others is not a weakness. It is a strength that not many people have. Sandra looked up at him with soft eyes. She said that sometimes she worries people will see her kindness as a distraction or something unnecessary. Keanu shook his head slowly. He told her that real kindness is rare and powerful, and that her presence made everyone around her stronger. Sandra seemed touched by his words. She took a small breath and smiled in a way that made Keanu feel a warm pull inside his heart. As evening approached, the filming of the stunt continued. Though everyone remained cautious, the atmosphere was calmer. The assistant returned to her position with new determination. Sandra gave her a reassuring nod before stepping into the scene. Keanu noticed how the assistant drew strength from that single gesture. It amazed him how one quiet act could steady a trembling heart. The stunt went smoothly for the rest of the day. The director praised the cast and crew for their resilience. When filming wrapped, Sandra and Keanu walked out of the studio together. The sky was dim and the evening breeze carried a soft chill. They talked about the challenges they faced that day. Sandra said she was grateful the assistant was safe. Keanu agreed and told her that she had handled everything with incredible strength. Sandra replied that she only did what any decent person would do. Keanu paused and looked at her with honest eyes. He told her not everyone thinks that way and that her heart was something truly special. Sandra lowered her gaze shyly as if she was not used to hearing such sincere appreciation. She thanked him quietly. Keanu felt a deep connection form between them in that moment. It was built from respect, honesty, and shared courage. When they said goodnight, Keanu watched her walk away and felt an emotion he could not yet name. It was not romantic and not simple admiration. It was something more delicate, something that grew from witnessing genuine kindness again and again. He realized he was beginning to understand why the memory of Sandra would never leave him. It was not one moment. It was the collection of many small truths, all leading to the same conclusion. She was someone who carried real goodness in her heart. Keanu continued speaking in the interview with a calm voice, but inside he felt the weight of the memory growing stronger as he moved further into the story. He remembered the final phase of filming, a time filled with tension and exhaustion, yet also filled with moments that shaped the bond he shared with Sandra. The days felt shorter because work stretched late into the night. The crew pushed through difficult scenes. Emotions ran high because everyone wanted the movie to succeed. But through all the pressure and uncertainty, there was a quiet strength that seemed to come from Sandra, a strength that guided people when they felt close to breaking down. Keanu remembered one particular week when the set felt unusually heavy. The director was stressed about the deadline. Some crew members were dealing with personal problems. Even the assistant, who had slowly grown more confident, seemed uncertain again. The atmosphere felt crowded with emotions people tried to hide. Keanu felt the weight too. He had been giving all his energy to every scene, and though he stayed calm on the outside, he felt a deep tiredness growing inside him. One evening they were rehearsing a long emotional sequence. The scene required both Keanu and Sandra to express fear, confusion, and a strong need to protect each other. They practiced several times, but something felt off. Keanu's movements were stiff, and he struggled to connect with the emotional tone. Sandra noticed immediately. She could always sense when something was wrong even before anyone said a word. She stepped closer to him and asked softly if he was all right. Keanu hesitated because he did not want to add more stress to her day, but she waited patiently, giving him the space to be honest. He finally admitted that he felt drained. He said he was worried about the crew, the assistant, the stunt risks, and whether he was doing enough to support the people around him. He told her that sometimes he felt like he should be stronger than he actually was. Sandra listened with full attention. She did not interrupt him. She did not try to solve everything. She simply allowed him to speak until he had nothing left to say. Her eyes held a softness he had come to trust deeply. When he finished, she told him that strength is not about pretending to be fine. She said that real strength comes from honesty and from the ability to keep going even when you feel exhausted. She told him she admired the way he cared about people because not everyone has that ability. Keanu felt something warm rise inside him. Her words lifted the pressure he had been holding for days. He thanked her quietly, and she gave him a gentle smile that calmed his thoughts. When they returned to the scene, something shifted. The emotions flowed naturally. Their expressions matched the intensity of the moment. The director watched silently, then told them it was their best performance so far. Keanu knew it was because Sandra helped him reconnect to the truth of the moment. He realized that her presence gave him strength in ways he could not explain. It felt like she understood parts of him he rarely showed to anyone. The next day, the assistant approached Keanu during a break. She had a small notebook in her hands. She explained that she had been writing ideas for the scene to help the crew understand the emotional direction. She asked if he could look through it. Keanu opened the notebook and saw simple notes, sketches, and reminders about lighting and timing. It was clear she had worked very hard on it. He praised her effort and told her she had a good eye for detail. The assistant's face brightened. She said she wanted to contribute more because Sandra always told her she had potential. Keanu felt touched by how much Sandra had helped this young woman grow. Later that afternoon, another unexpected challenge appeared. One of the large set pieces malfunctioned during a rehearsal. It caused a loud crash that echoed through the building. Several people jumped in shock. The assistant stumbled backward and nearly fell again. Sandra reached her instantly and held her steady. She whispered to her, helping her breathe until her panic softened. Keanu watched from a few feet away. He saw how Sandra used gentleness as if it were a shield protecting those who needed it. The director called for another break, and during that time Keanu sat with Sandra near one of the quiet corners of the building. He thanked her for always protecting the assistant. She replied that she simply wanted the young woman to believe she belonged on the set. Sandra said she remembered what it felt like to be new in the industry and to doubt herself. She told Keanu that people grow stronger when they feel seen. He felt moved by her insight. Once again, he felt grateful for the way she naturally helped people without expecting anything in return. As filming moved into its final week, the pressure increased. Many scenes needed to be finished before the set was closed. Everyone felt the exhaustion but pushed through with determination. Sandra and Keanu worked long hours. They fell into a rhythm of supporting each other through each difficult moment. Whenever Sandra felt tired, Keanu encouraged her gently. Whenever Keanu felt overwhelmed, Sandra reminded him to breathe and focus. One night they filmed a complex emotional sequence that required them to show fear and trust in a very raw and honest way. The lights were low. The set was filled with smoke effects. The crew watched with silent anticipation. As they performed the scene, something powerful happened. Keanu looked into Sandra's eyes and felt a connection that went beyond acting. It felt like they were sharing something real, something that reached into the deepest part of human emotion. When the scene ended, the director was stunned. He said it felt like they had captured something rare. Keanu felt it too. He felt emotionally shaken but grateful. When they wrapped for the night, Sandra walked beside him in the quiet hallway. She looked tired but peaceful. Keanu thanked her for helping him reach that emotional depth. She smiled softly and said that sometimes two people just understand each other in moments that cannot be repeated. She said she felt grateful too. They walked outside where the cool night air touched their skin. Keanu looked at the sky and thought about how unpredictable life can be, how a single moment can change everything. How a single person can change the way you see the world. As they prepared to leave, Sandra turned to him and told him something that stayed with him forever. She said that kindness creates a circle. Every time he helped someone, even in small ways, that kindness returned to him in unexpected forms. She said this was why people trusted him so deeply. Keanu felt something inside him shift again. He realized that the connection he shared with Sandra was built on honesty, trust, and compassion. It was something he had not expected when filming began. He watched her walk to her car and felt a strong sense of gratitude. She had become someone he respected not only as an actor but as a human being. She brought light into difficult moments. She brought calm into chaos. She brought humanity into a world that often forgot it. He knew he would remember her kindness for the rest of his life. The final days of filming arrived with a mixture of excitement and sadness. Everyone on the set could feel the weight of the moment. They had spent months together building scenes, sharing challenges, and supporting one another through every unexpected turn. Keanu felt the closing of the project settle slowly inside him. He knew that when the last scene was shot, everyone would return to their own paths. He knew that time would move forward in the quiet way it always does, taking people in different directions. But he also knew that certain memories would remain sharp forever. The morning of their final shoot, the crew gathered with a kind of gentle energy. The assistant stood confidently among them, her notebook in hand, her eyes steady and bright. She had grown so much since the first day. Keanu watched her and felt a deep pride for her journey. He knew that Sandra had been one of the strongest reasons she changed. The assistant walked up to Keanu and Sandra with a small handwritten letter. She said she wanted to give it to them after the final shot. She looked shy but grateful. Sandra hugged her warmly and told her she had become someone people could rely on. Keanu added that she had shown more courage in a few weeks than many show in a lifetime. The final scene required Keanu and Sandra to stand side by side in a moment of emotional intensity. The script called for fear, relief, and a silent sense of trust. It was the kind of scene that captured the heart of their characters. But when the cameras began to roll, what happened between them went beyond acting. Their eyes met with an understanding formed not by the script, but by the months of real moments they had lived together. They knew each other's strengths and weaknesses. They knew each other's fears and quiet hopes. They had shared laughter, danger, exhaustion, and countless small acts of kindness. Their emotions flowed naturally. Their expressions carried truth. The crew watched them with breath held. The director did not speak a word until the scene was over. When he finally said cut, his voice sounded gentle and full of respect. He told them it was more than a performance. It was a moment that felt alive. Keanu felt a tightness in his chest. He knew it was the last time they would act in this story. Sandra stepped closer and placed her hand on his arm. They shared a smile that said more than words could ever express. After wrapping the scene, the crew applauded and congratulated one another. People hugged, people took photos, people laughed with the relief that comes when a long journey reaches its final step. The assistant approached Keanu and Sandra and handed them the letter she had written. She thanked them for believing in her, for protecting her, for seeing her when she could not see herself. She told them they changed her life. Sandra held her close, and Keanu placed a hand on her shoulder. They told her she earned her place through her own courage. The assistant wiped her tears with a smile that held pride instead of fear. As the wrap celebration continued, Keanu stepped outside for a moment of quiet. The late afternoon sun cast a warm glow on the empty part of the set. He let the stillness settle into him. The memories of the entire experience passed through his mind like a sequence of gentle waves. The day the assistant nearly fell. The moment Sandra reached him with her steady grip. The way she protected the people around her without hesitation. The late-night talks. The honesty they shared. The trust that grew between them from the simplest moments. He realized that some experiences in life change you quietly, not with dramatic explosions but with soft shifts in understanding. He felt grateful for every moment he lived beside Sandra. He felt grateful for the chance to see the honesty in her heart. He understood now why certain memories stay forever. They are not held by the mind. They are held by the soul. Sandra joined him outside. She wrapped her arms around herself as a soft breeze passed. She looked at him with a tired but peaceful smile. She said she could not believe the filming was over. He nodded and said the same. They both knew endings were a part of life, but they did not feel ready for this one. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with everything they understood but did not need to say. After a moment, Sandra spoke softly. She said she was grateful for the entire experience and especially grateful for him. She said he made the difficult days easier and the heavy moments lighter. Keanu felt his heart warm at her words. He told her she had done the same for him. He said she taught him things he did not expect to learn. He told her she reminded him that kindness is not a simple act but a powerful force that can change the path of others. She looked at him with soft eyes and told him she hoped he would carry that understanding into every part of his life. He smiled gently and told her he would. He knew he meant it. He also knew that something inside him had shifted in a lasting way. A short while later, the director called everyone inside for a final group photo. Keanu and Sandra walked back together. The assistant stood between them, smiling proudly for the camera. The flash captured a moment that would never repeat, a moment built on trust, courage, and kindness. As people began to leave one by one, Keanu and Sandra walked outside again. Their cars waited near the entrance. Sandra turned to him and asked if he would stay in touch. He told her he would. They hugged with the warmth of two people who had shared something meaningful. When they stepped back, Sandra looked at him with a gentle seriousness he had only seen a few times. She told him there was something she had not said earlier. She said that the moment she grabbed his arm during the accident stayed with her too. She said she remembered the fear she felt at the thought of losing someone who showed kindness without hesitation. She said that moment reminded her that good people are worth protecting. Keanu felt a deep stillness inside him as she spoke. He told her he would never forget that moment either. He said it became a memory that carried light into the darkest days. He thanked her from a place deeper than words. Sandra smiled, then stepped into her car. She waved softly through the window before it drove away. Keanu stood there for a long moment. The sky above him shifted from gold to soft blue. He felt a sense of peace. He felt whole. He understood now why he would never forget Sandra, because she did not just save him in one moment. She helped him grow in countless small ways. She showed him what quiet strength looks like. She reminded him what true kindness feels like. Years later, when the interviewer asked Keanu if there was one moment with Sandra he would never forget, he already knew the answer. He knew it before the question was finished. He knew it with the same clear certainty he felt on the day it happened. He smiled softly in the interview chair and said there was a moment of pure kindness that stayed with him all his life. It was something he had never spoken about until now. Something that shaped him. Something that showed him the beauty that lives in the hearts of rare people. He told the world that Sandra Bullock is one of those rare people, someone who brings light simply by being herself. someone whose kindness becomes a memory that never fades.